So, what's up with Aliens vs. Predator? Well, there's aliens, and there's also a predator, and in between all of it are the hapless colonial marines, also from the Aliens franchise. The game is a first-person shooter that, well, as a marine requires you to shoot, as an alien requires you to claw, and as a predator requires you to hunt your way across 3 different campaigns in various parts of the galaxy. The game was developed and released by Rebellion in 1999 for Mac and PC, and although it's certainly not the first crossover from Aliens and Predator, it might certainly be the most well-known of all the games in the franchise. The Aliens vs. Predator franchise first found its genesis within the pages of Dark Horse Comics, before Hellboy had come along, and the publisher was mostly known for putting out material based on science fiction blockbusters. From those original comics, Aliens vs. Predator would expand to include the 2 well-known movies, several spin-off series, more games, including the 2010 remake of this one, and several novels and merchandise, all based on the concept of the 2 galactic killers duking it out. Having been released in 1999, Aliens vs. Predator met with some stiff competition on the PC gaming front. As you might know, this is the same year that classic, well-known titles like Unreal Tournament, Counter-Strike, Team Fortress Classic, and System Shock 2 were released. However, Aliens vs. Predator manages to transcend the appeal of its involved franchises and deliver a gameplay experience that's surprisingly solid and pretty entertaining. Although the Colonial Marines portion of the game is pretty standard as far as first-person shooters go, Aliens vs. Predator manages to create a pretty tense and terrifying atmosphere with the enemies you find yourself up against. The xenomorphs can pop out of darkness at a moment's notice, and the predators will come at you like giant galactic terminators just sucking up all your bullets. The game also provides pretty unique gameplay experiences with the Alien and Predator campaigns, with the Xenomorph having the ability to crawl on walls and ceilings, and the Predator having the ability to turn invisible and sneak around like some sort of unseen killing machine, which is basically what it is. Now, I'm sure all of you would like to see some sort of substantial gameplay from Aliens vs. Predator, so here's the first level of the Colonial Marines campaign. You play as, well, a Colonial Marine, and you've been rousted from your bed in the wake of some sort of emergency. You have to move your way through the facility, reach the end, and kill some aliens, obviously. Although the plot of Aliens vs. Predator won't be winning any awards, it's interesting to note that unlike most games based on aliens, this game doesn't place you directly after the events of the film, and instead sets it on the planet from the original Alien, with you in this facility that's studying the derelict spacecraft from the first film. Although this distinction is ultimately irrelevant, especially in a game that's mostly focused on gameplay, I enjoy seeing the references to the first Alien movie, especially considering it's my favorite out of the franchise. It's also nice to see nods to a film that never really got its gaming due until recently with the release of Alien Isolation. As you can probably tell, a large part of Aliens vs. Predator is about vision, light, and darkness, which contributes a lot to the overall atmosphere of the game. The Marine has the ability to launch flares into dark spaces, and as you'll see, also has a night vision mode called the Image Intensifier. This vision mode is also reflected in the Xenomorph and Predator's ability, with the Alien having the sort of pheromone vision ability, which makes everything a negative color, and the Predator having a huge array of, I think, 5 vision modes? It's a lot, but it makes sense for an intergalactic killer like the Predator. And that's something I've always found pretty personally compelling about this game. Every gameplay choice is designed to make the experience of playing the Colonial Marine, the Alien, or the Predator more real and involved like it would in their respective movies. This game does a great job of representing the 2 franchises, but as you can see, there's a lot more to it than just fan service. Although my knowledge of any Predator games is admittedly limited, the Aliens games have always had a problem with balancing reverence for the source material with an actually decent gameplay experience. A pretty big violator of this rule was the Colonial Marines game back from 2012, I think. It had a lot going for it in terms of the way it treated the Aliens material, but in terms of gameplay, artificial intelligence, and just general experience, that game was a real mess, as anyone who can play it can attest to. That's why I'd say that this version of Aliens vs. Predator is definitely one of the best Alien-related games ever made, up there with 2 of my other personal favorites, the aforementioned Alien Isolation and the criminally underrated Aliens Infestation for the Nintendo DS. If you still have a DS and you're a fan of Aliens and Metroidvania titles, I cannot recommend Infestation enough. It never really got its due on release, but it has always remained one of my personal favorites that's involved with the franchise. Although I personally am not familiar with how this version of Aliens vs. Predator fared on its original release, I can say it feels like it's almost due for a second wind. Back in 2010, I believe, maybe earlier, maybe later, this game was re-released on Steam as Aliens vs. Predator Classic 2000. This version of the game, which is the one you see here, also comes with built-in Xbox 360 controller support, which makes it a lot easier to play if you're not a fan of a mouse and keyboard. In either way, this game will feel pretty familiar to anybody who's ever played an early first-person shooter, i.e. from the early or late 90s. Well, maybe not the early 90s, but certainly the late 90s. Although Rebellion would follow up this game with a direct sequel and the 2010 remake to coincide with one of the Aliens vs. Predator films, neither of those games really deliver the kind of experience this original does. It's hard to say when we'll see any more Aliens vs. Predator franchise stuff coming out that isn't a comic book, so I guess if you're a hardcore fan of the crossover, play what you can, when you can. That being said, I think this game has a lot of appeal outside of just fans of the respective franchises. If you're a fan of classic first-person shooters and managed to look this one over, or if you're a fan of survival horror games, I think that Aliens vs. Predator is a pretty solid game in both respects. I can't say that everyone will enjoy it, but hey, if it looks like your thing, maybe consider checking it out. So having just played the Colonial Marines portion of the game, it leaves a question hanging. Why would I play as one of these weak humans when I can play as a killing machine like the Alien or the Predator? Well, thankfully, this game does a good job of balancing its experiences, and playing as an alien or a predator can be just as harrowing as playing as a human. Up against other aliens and predators and the heavy weaponry of the Colonial Marines, you can be just as scared and helpless. So in the end, Aliens vs. Predator 1999 is a pretty fun game that uses a lot of interesting gameplay mechanics to really do justice to the franchises that it involves. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'm Ryan, and if you want to hear more about my opinions on this game, be sure to check out my article on videogamechoochoo.com. Thanks for watching, and be sure to stay tuned for more content.